John Fitzgerald Kennedy was born to Joseph Patrick Kennedy and Rose Elizabeth Fitzgerald on May 29, 1917, in Brookline, Massachusetts. His father was a businessman and politician, and his mother was a philanthropist. John was one of 9. He had 3 brothers and 5 sisters. During his childhood, his family moved several times after living in Brookline for 10 years. In doing so, the children attended many different private schools. Among those that Kennedy attended were the Canterbury School in New Milford, Connecticut, and the Choate School in Wallingford, Connecticut. Kennedy attended Harvard and studied political philosophy. He wrote a thesis about the concept of appeasement, which ended up becoming a bestseller. He graduated in 1940. JFK joined the U.S. Navy in 1941 after he was told he could not be a part of the Army due to his lower back issues that started from his childhood. He became a war hero during World War II and eventually was honorably discharged in 1945. After being a member of the House of Representatives for 6 years, Kennedy ran for Senate in 1952, beating the Republican nominee Henry Cabot Lodge. He married his wife Jacqueline in 1953 and won a Pulitzer Prize for his biography in 1957. Kennedy gained serious popularity and attention in the time leading up to the 1960 presidential election, in which he defeated Richard Nixon. The Kennedy-Nixon debates brought rise to a national adoration for Kennedy. It was televised, and on the screen, viewers could see the sweaty and feverish Nixon battling the tall, tan, and handsome Kennedy. Kennedy defeated Nixon on November 8th and became the 35th president and the youngest man to be elected to the presidential office at the age of 43. While in office, Kennedy had to tackle both domestic and foreign affairs. Kennedy's domestic programming was referred to as the New Frontier. Passing all he wanted to pass under this idea was difficult with a small Democratic population in Congress. Under Kennedy, there was another recession in which he worked to end through social reforms and programs. This included lowering taxes and raising minimum wage. His social programs included federal aid for education, a department for urban affairs, urban mass transit, and much more. Many of his attempts, however, were shut down by Congress, such as civil rights and tax cuts. Civil rights, the greatest domestic affair, experienced some lack of advocating from Kennedy, for he only enforced what rules were already in place, instead of passing new ones. It wasn't until after his assassination that his civil rights bill finally passed in Congress and became allowed. Interactions with Cuba turned out to be the largest foreign affairs that the Kennedy administration had to tackle. Kennedy planned an invasion on Cuba that was supposed to be sponsored by America. Kennedy was told that the outcome of the invasion was likely to be positive, so he agreed, but the refugee force was quickly defeated by Castro's army. During the Cold War, the Soviets built the Berlin Wall, which showed another representation of the communism up against America. The Cuban Missile Crisis, however, became a major issue during the Cold War. Kennedy stated that the Soviet missiles in Cuba were obviously going to be used to destroy the Western Hemisphere, and he threatened to invade Cuba, and the world was brought close to a nuclear war. However, the crisis finally ended in 1962 when Kennedy ordered the lifting of the naval blockade he had placed against Cuba. Some of Kennedy's successes included NASA, the space program he developed, and a race to get Americans to the moon by the end of the decade. He unfortunately died before the lunar landing. Another development was the Peace Corps, a force created to help improve social and economic standings in other countries around the world. November 22, 1963, turned out to be a tragic day for Kennedy, his family, and the nation. While in the presidential limousine riding through Dallas, Texas, shots were fired into the vehicle, and 2 hit and killed Kennedy. He was rushed to the hospital but died. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for the murder. He was a former Marine. Oswald was murdered by a Dallas nightclub owner, however. Many conspiracies are held about the death of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. However, the one conclusion that can be made was that he was a symbol for what the nation wanted to be, youthful and prosperous, and that his death was a horrible shock.